Give me the Bible, star of gladness gleaming, to cheer the wanderer lone and tempest-tossed. No storms can hide that radiance peaceful beaming, since Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible when my heart is broken, when sin and grief have filled my soul with fear. Give me the precious words by Jesus spoken. Hold up faith's lamp to show my Savior near. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible, all my steps enlighten, teach me the dangers of these realms below. That lamp of safety o'er the gloom shall brighten, that light alone the path of peace can show. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible, lamp of life immortal, hold up that splendor by the open grave. Show me the light from heaven's shining portals, show me the glory gilding Jordan's wave. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Break thou the bread of life, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst break the loaves beside the sea. Beyond the sacred page, I seek thee, Lord. My spirit pants for thee, O living word. Bless thou the truth, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst bless the bread by Galilee. Then shall all bondage cease, all fetters fall, and I shall find my peace, my all in all. Good afternoon. Let's edify one another, shall we? As we travel down through another portion of study to show ourselves approved unto God. We seek to show ourselves approved unto God, not unto man, for it is God that we seek to please. Hello, CJ. Good to have you with us. We are performing another lesson, you might say. Performing. No, we're not performing. We're digging. We're studying. We're working in another lesson in our beginning at the beginning series of going through the book of Genesis. And we have been working in.
Hello, Summer Hair Bear.
What?
Hello, Summer Hair Bear.
Yeah, I know. How about this? Like that one better? That's my alternate. Hi. Anyhow, as we play with the names. Anyhow, as I was saying, we have been dealing with with Genesis chapter 21. Abraham has been in Gerar, in the land of the Philistines, and in the first part of this chapter, Isaac has been weaned, and at the celebration of his weaning, Sarah sees Ishmael mocking, playing in a not so kind way with Isaac, and she takes offense at it. Now, we did discuss a little bit. The word itself could mean just simply sporting, and it could have been just a brother, sporting with a brother. But the text leads itself to the idea that he was sporting in a not kind way, and she takes offense, and she tells Abraham that she wants him gone, Ishmael gone, because she doesn't want any challenge to the inheritance of her son. As the first wife, or the premier wife, that was her right, her prerogative, and as the son of that wife, Isaac was the one that stood to inherit, because he was, number one, the son of promise, but also the son of that first wife. Ergo, he becomes the firstborn, even though Ishmael was technically the firstborn, but he was the firstborn of the concubine, one who did not have the status of the wifehood. So God tells Abraham, go ahead, send her out, send the lad out. I will take care of them. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and give heed to Sarah, thy wife. I will provide for them, and then I will, and because he is one of your children, he will also become a great nation. So Abraham does so. And we mentioned how it was odd where Hagar found herself in the wilderness of what was it, Bethesda? Beersheba, rather. In the wilderness of Beersheba. And summation is that she was more than likely headed back to Egypt. We don't know for sure. That is a supposition. However, she was in the wilderness when she could have been near to Gerar and could have found herself a place there. But she ended up in the wilderness, and God heard the voice of the lad. And what this tells us is that that Ishmael had learned something from Abraham, and that is how to pray to God. And the angel intercedes and speaks to Hagar and leads her to water, reiterates a promise of protection to her, and they dwell in the wilderness of Paran, and which is different from the wilderness of Beersheba, and they continue life. He gets a wife from Egypt because his mother goes back and takes a wife from Egypt. And we then shift focus back to Abraham. And so we pick up in Genesis 21, having brought us all the way back after review. All right, so Abimelech has cast Abraham out after chastising him about the matter. Hello, Heather. The matter of Sarah and the lie that they told, the half-truth. And he said, here's the land, go where you want to go. So in essence, go away from us. We're not going to stop you. You can go where you want to go. And it almost, hello, Reba. It almost is like we don't want to remember this. We're just not going to speak of it again. And so they come out now to Abraham and Abimelech and his general, Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And they come to Abraham and says, we see that God's with you. And so Abimelech seeks the good of his people. We mentioned this last chapter where Abimelech was a God-fearing man. Otherwise, God would not have stopped him from committing that sin per se. God reached out to Abimelech and said, hey, don't you dare go into Sarah. She is another man's wife. And, and he told him that, Abimelech's like, well, would you have killed all of us for one sin? And, and I'm paraphrasing here. God said, that's why I come to you, to stop you from committing this sin. Hello, Sam. And so Abimelech and Phicol come to Abraham and says, swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor my son's son. So he basically takes care of his children, his descendants, for a minimum of three generations, a minimum. But according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, you shall do to me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. So Abimelech, recognizing the hand of God with Abraham, and begs this favor of Abraham: do not mistreat me or my son or my kindred, my grandchildren, but be kind to them for the kindness that I have done. Now, many, many descendants years later, we know that the Philistines became a thorn in the side of Israel. We have, of course, the account of Samson. We have the accounts throughout the book of Judges and into First and Second Samuel, throughout the rest of the kingdom of Israel and Judah. And hello, Sister Debbie. But at this point in time, Abimelech's a God-fearing man. His neighbor, as it were, was Melchizedek, king of Salem. Abraham, a prophet, a man of God, a friend of God, walking around in their land. Abraham, so he comes to Abraham and says, hey, swear to me by this, because we know God's with you. And Abraham says, okay, I will. Then we have the matter of a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech says, I didn't know anything about this. Nor did you tell me of this. And so this is all news to me, fresh today. So Abraham shows the sincerity of his word, the sincerity of this in verse 27, by taking sheep and oxen and gives them to Abimelech and makes this covenant. He makes it, first off, he shows the sincerity of his vow, because that's what the verse 27 is about. The sheep and the oxen. This is the vow he makes between him and Abimelech, with Phicol as the witness. Hello, Sister T. So the sheep, the oxen, this is what we see. This is the covenant that they were going to make. And this was the symbol. And remember the covenant that we had between Abraham and the Lord? Let's see here. Was it that one? Here it is. In Genesis 15, God has Abraham take a heifer, 3 years old, and a she-goat, 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he has them slay them, and he makes a covenant with Abraham. And these were the symbols. This was the blood that was shed to seal the covenant of the land nation blessing. And then we have the covenant of the circumcision, and there was bloodshed there, i.e. the circumcision. And now we come in with Abraham showing Abraham and Abimelech. As soon as I get back there where I was. There we go. And we have them sealing this covenant of kindness, this pledge of kindness between Abraham and 3 generations, Abraham and Abimelech for 3 generations. And we know that, of course, Abraham did not, and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did nothing to the Philistines because of that covenant. Of course, they didn't, one might argue that they didn't do anything to the Philistines anyway, because they didn't need to. But remember, Isaac was a very great man, and he could have, except that I think the covenant was in effect. So they take these sheep, this oxen, and he gives them to Abimelech, and they make that covenant. It doesn't say they slew him, but it does say he gave them, and this was the sign, the seal of their covenant. Now, in doing so, he then takes 7 ewe lambs and sets them off by themselves. And when asked, Abraham says, hey, this is my sign of the integrity of my word. Abimelech says, what are these 7 ewes by themselves? Why did you just set these 7 ewes by themselves? And he says, these are my witness that this was my well. And those men took my well from me violently. And that's why he called the place Beersheba. And which is really cool, because remember, they have the wilderness of Beersheba, and now we know how the wilderness of Beersheba got its name. The wilderness of Beersheba got its name because of the well that Abraham digged and Abimelech's people violently took away, then um, then Abraham made his oath to before Abimelech, saying, "This is my well." And that, okay, and it has a double meaning. Beersheba means well of an oath, and well of an oath. And you know that they made two oaths there. One for the kindness of Abraham to Abimelech's descendants, and one for the well. So there was a double oath there. And that's kind of another Brown Driver Briggs calls it the well of the sevenfold oath. 7 U's, sevenfold oath. And it's kind of like cool because what do you keep an ewe in? What do you keep sheep in? A fold. So that's really cool as you consider the ins and outs of that particular word. But sevenfold just means 7 times. Good afternoon, Susan Stanley. All right. So Beersheba is the well of sevenfold oath, the well of an oath. And there were two oaths that were made there. One of them was signified by by the sheep and oxen. The other oath was by 7 ewe sheep. And they made their covenant at Beersheba. And Abimelech and Phicol rose up. They go away to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham plants a grove there in Beersheba and calls on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Am I alive? Yes, that's why I said hello, Sam, when you said hello. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines, or in the Philistine lands many days. Genesis 22. So, any questions or comments over Genesis 21? Hail, hail, the gang's all here. Okay, let's continue on then. Seeing as how nobody has any. Tweet, tweet. No, that's not working. That's better. Yeah, it's really an interesting situation, wouldn't you say? All right. Melchizedek is the king of Salem, and he's living next door, almost as it were, to Abimelech. All right. And they would have known each other. Abimelech's the king of Gerar. Melchizedek's the king of Salem. So, and hello again, Reba. Well, I did say hello to you, Sam, when you came in. So I'll say it again. Hello to everybody that is here. We have Heather, Sam, CJ, Reba, Debbie, and Teresa, and Susan Stanley. So picking up in Genesis chapter 22, verse 1, we have the sacrifice of Isaac. Now, there's some interesting things about the sacrifice of Isaac. First off, we begin with the verse, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, behold, here am I. People will look at this verse, especially in the King James, and say, hey, look, God tempts people. Yet, when we look at James chapter 1, verse 13, it says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. So is this a contradiction? And the short answer is no. It is not a contradiction. Why? Simply put, I need to go back. The word tempt here. Means to test, to prove, to try, to put to the test. Now, you and I are familiar from our time in grade school with the idea of what a test is, right? Now, some may say that it's, especially CJ, by the way, he's fresh out of high school, closer than any of us to that time period in his life. Some people may say that those tests were definitely a temptation for frustration. But God tried Abraham. He put him to the test. Does that mean he tempted him? No. You and I are put through trials. We are put through tests to prove our faith. And that's a whole nother subject for a totally different stream, which I'm sure that CJ is right now in the midst of suddenly feverishly beginning to plan a pulpit times lesson on. He's refusing to show himself. So God did test Abraham, and he says unto him, Abraham, he says, and Abraham says, behold, here am I. So God says, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and get you into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. So, just like God has told Abraham, get you out of your land, the land of your nativity, get you away from your family, go to a land which I'm going to tell you of. Well, he says the same thing about this test. Get you out and go to this mountain that I'm going to tell you of. And he says, you're going to offer up your son for a burnt offering. It seems rather harsh, Lord. You just gave him to me. Isaac's not a baby. Remember, he was weaned a little while ago, just a chapter ago. It's been a year or two, but I mean, it's still a chapter or so ago. How can I tell you it's been a year? It's been a year or two. Well, we'll get to that. In all honesty, it's several years, but anyhow. So Abraham rises up. He doesn't sit there and question God. He doesn't challenge God. No, he rises up early. He gets up early in the morning. He saddles his donkey, and he takes two of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, rises up, and goes to the place which God had told him. The two young men he didn't take just for show. He took for decoration. They were his protection. Remember, in this day and age, this is a wild country. These are the days of city states. You have you have Salem. It's a city. It's a walled city. You have Sodom. It's got its own king. Gomorrah had its king. And, Gerar had its king. These are city states. And you have people that ply robbery, and so you have robbers and brigands and all sorts of people that are running back and forth, and it's a lawless land. That's why Abraham has over 300 men in his employ, in his household, that are trained in the art of war, that we saw back just a few chapters in Genesis chapter 14. Remember how and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Why is that? Because there were people. Why did he have trained servants that were armed? Because there were people out there that would steal his sheep. There were people out there that would steal his goats and camels and oxen and donkeys. There were people out there that would harm his family. And so he went with servants. That's the wrong one. There we go. With two of his young men. He went with them to go to the place where God had told him. And so on the third day, he lifts up his eyes and he sees the place afar off. Now remember, God said, go to the place which I'll tell you of. And so by the third day, God had told him where to go. This is the place I want you to go to. And he sees the place and he says to the young men, hey, stay here, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and then come again to you. Now, here's the next thing I want to point out. For 3 days, Abraham journeyed with Isaac, his son. With Isaac, his son of promise. One might say his truly begotten son. His unique son, i.e. the son of promise. And for 3 days in the mind of Abraham, his son Isaac was as good as dead. God told Abraham, go offer Isaac as a burnt offering to me. So his one unique son for 3 days was dead, going to be a sacrifice. Are we seeing a shadow? Are we seeing a correlation? Shh, CJ, don't give it away. What's the correlation? Can anybody tell me? Where's Maureen? We haven't seen her in the last couple of days. What's the correlation? The word correlation, where one thing is equal to another. Heather nails it. Jesus, he was God's unique son, i.e., the son of promise, by the way, who was sacrificed for us. And for 3 days, that son was dead. Hey, Gloria, good to see you. So the two are tied, the shadow and the true. So what we have is Isaac, for a time, was the shadow of the real, of the true. Really cool, isn't it?
You guys were slow. I can't believe you can't get that from my class I did like 3 months ago. Come on, guys. We talked about this in September.
3 months ago, though, CJ, lots happened in 3 months.
Yeah.
Come on, man. So Abraham leaves the two young men there, and he's going to go worship with the lad. Again, remember, and there's like, give me a break, man. I just got home from a long day of work, man. So Abraham takes the wood for the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac, his son. Okay, now if Isaac was still just a toddler, you wouldn't be able to carry all this wood, now would he? How much wood could a toddler carry if a toddler could carry wood? CJ's shaking his head at me. Yeah, but Heather's laughing. Now, Abraham lays it upon Isaac. So this is a young son who's able to carry a good portion of wood. And he takes the fire in his hand, and Reba says, chill, CJ. Heather's like, mine could handle it. Teresa says a bunch of toddlers could be strong. Yeah, but this was only one, and he wasn't a 2-year-old taking a massive amount of wood on his back. So Abraham takes the fire in his hand and a knife, and they both of them went together. Gloria's having a hard day today. I'd imagine the pain in your wrists are pretty driving you nuts, aren't they, Gloria? So Isaac speaks unto Abraham. So we're definitely not talking about a toddler here, are we? We're talking about someone who is able to converse well. He could carry a bunch of toddlers? Isaac speaks unto Abraham, and he says, my father, and he says, here I am, my son, or here am I, my son. Behold the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Okay, logic. This lad is able to reason and carry on, is able to discern. We've got fire, we've got wood, but we're missing a lamb. Where's the burnt offering? Do you suppose that Isaac is familiar with the rite of sacrifice? Well, CJ cracks the whip, Teresa. Heather says, oh, yes. Yeah, he would be, wouldn't he? If he's familiar enough to know that there needs to be a lamb for a burnt offering, he's very familiar with the rite of sacrifice. Do you suppose then that Isaac is, do you suppose that Isaac has been taught in the ways of God by Abraham? Yes. As surely as Ishmael was, and don't call him Shirley, Isaac was taught in the ways of God. That one earned me a glimpse at CJ shaking his head. Abraham says one of the greatest statements of faith in the entire Bible. One of the greatest statements of faith. My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. Now, grammatically, that can go any of two ways. God will himself provide a lamb for a burnt offering. That's grammatically correct. Or God will provide himself as a lamb for a burnt offering. As I said, one of the greatest statements of faith in the Bible. One as a prophet that is foreshadowing and yet still, like Heather says, gives us chills, doesn't it? God himself will provide a lamb for a burnt offering. Or God will provide himself a burnt offering. But upon that statement of faith, they both were then one together. They continue on. And so they come to the place where God has told Abraham, go offer. Teresa said, did you get your microphone? Teresa, focus. And they come to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Now, I want you to notice another thing here. How old was Abraham? I don't need an exact age, I just need a rough estimate. How old was Abraham? Sam, you've been awful quiet. How old was Abraham? Over 100, right? He was 100, or he was 99 when Isaac was built. And if Isaac has proceeded to the point of where he is able to walk by himself, carry a bundle of wood by himself, and speak and reason, then he was at least 100. I mean, he was over 100, probably closer to the 120, 113-ish, something like that. Yeah. Anywhere between 100 and, say, 120. Let's put it that way. How fast do you suppose he could have run? That's a good question, Heather. I've got an answer or an idea of an answer for you in just a moment. He was old. His son was young. What do you suppose was the speed difference? He probably would have been a lot slower than his son, right? So why didn't Isaac run away when his father grabbed him and bound him? Why didn't Isaac struggle? Any ideas? Isaac has the same faith as his father. CJ says that he was submissive and trust his father. Other points to Hebrews 11. He could be raised from the dead. He had faith in God too, says Reba. Teresa says probably because Sodom. Oh, she's answering Heather's. We'll get to that in a minute. Because Abraham taught discipline. Because Abraham taught honor. What was one of the 10 commandments? Sam says aches and pains slow father down. Young man had to learn patience. He grew in faith and obedience. And that's the thing. Abraham taught obedience. Sam says honor your parents. That's right. Isn't that one also carried over into the New Testament? That's not the one I was going for, Teresa. Ephesians 6. Honor your children, honor your father and mother in the Lord, for this is right. And I think Colossians also says it, does it not, CJ? And Romans chapter 1, 18 through 32 also says that those who are disobedient to parents have their place in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. That's right. You've been paying attention, Reba. And so Isaac didn't run because Abraham had taught him obedience and honor. Isaac didn't run because Abraham had taught him faith and trust. Now, as to Heather's question, which is a very good question, why did Abraham plead for the people of Sodom before it was destroyed, but didn't plead for his son's life? There's a twofold answer for this. And the first one is, for the people of Sodom, God was going to investigate their wickedness. And there's a multiplicity of people involved there. They didn't have an intercessor. However, what this also implies is that Isaac was innocent. Abraham knew that he was well within the arms of God. Now, additionally, there's another aspect of it too, Heather, and that is found right up here. As Sister T said, well, and this goes back to the first part. Sodom was doing it, probably because Sodom was doing evil, his son was not. But in reality, Abraham had faith. Folks, do you suppose Abraham knew a test when he saw it? Hello, Oshea. Do you suppose Abraham knew a test when he heard it? Furthermore, which one of us, if our God says to jump off a bridge, would not jump off of a bridge? Do we have the faith of Abraham? When God said to go to this country, he said, "Yes, Lord. Just show me the way." Or the faith of Jesus, when God said, "Go to earth, live a sinless life, and be a perfect sacrifice." Jesus said, "On the way, Father." Abraham didn't question the word of God. When God said do something, he did it. And many times, many times, what happens is that people would rather sit there and argue with God I always forget about that program. People sit there and would rather argue with God over why something isn't necessary or doesn't apply to them, rather than saying, "Yes, Lord. How high do you want me to jump? How deep do you want me to go in that water?" They'd rather say, "Okay, well, it's just it's not necessary. It's just an outward sign of an inward faith or grace. It's well, Lord, how about if I just get sprinkled? How about a little shower, just a little flick of water on me? Does that count? How about if I just one day a week give up my gambling, or one day, or I only go and drink with the guys on Friday?" You see the point? Abraham said, "I'm on my way, Lord." And of course, I'm paraphrasing. Abraham believed God, and it was a complete faith. And he says to Isaac, "My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering." And in that faith, he goes and he's ready to offer his son, his lamb, for that burnt offering. And as Abraham stretches forth his hand and takes that knife to slay his son, God's messenger calls to him and says to Abraham, stop. Whoa, hold on. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. I want you to notice here, who is speaking? Sam says, trust me, not to argue with God. He wins every time. We should not tamper with God's commands. Amen. Heather says, Jesus. The angel of the Lord oftentimes is used in reference to the Word, the pre-incarnate Christ. Notice what it says here. The angel of the Lord calls to Abraham, and he says, I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son from me. Putting two and two together, the angel of the Lord in this case is the Word. It is the messenger of the Lord, known as the Word. John 1, verse 1. So, what is the correlation then? What is the equal to the shadow versus the real in this verse, in these two verses, verses 11 and 12?
God didn't stay his hand when he offered Jesus.
Good point. That's a good lesson I hadn't considered. Thank you, CJ. But there's a shadow and a true as well. How about the fact that Abraham received back his son alive? So for 3 days, Isaac has been dead, or as good as dead. And there's a reference to that. Wasn't that in Hebrews?
Hebrews 11:7.
Thank you. We're going to go over there real quick. Let me put that on my... There we are. Hebrews 11:7. Thank you, CJ. It's always why it's so good to have somebody who's in the background able to help run these things. But
nope,
not 7.
19.
19?
Mm-hmm.
Accounting that, let's look at it here. Okay, so by faith, Abraham, 17, by the way, when he was tried, tested, not tempted, tried, tested, offered up Isaac, and that he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. Do you see? Look at the correlation. Yes. By faith, Abraham didn't have to plead for Isaac because this was done by faith. He was willing to go that far in faith, and God went that far for us. And when God stopped him and said, hold on, wait, don't offer him, Here's your son back. There's a ram behind you. He received Isaac back from the dead. Isaac was resurrected after 3 days.
Will it be too far to see the ram caught in the thicket as maybe an allusion to a crown of thorns?
Yeah, I think that's going probably a little too far. Because it's not really saying that the thicket was thorns. It's just saying it was caught in a bush.
Right.
So, and while the duty was rather prickly, it does, and Jesus was caught up in his duty, that would be going a little too far, I think. So we are, where are we at? Genesis 22:11. So I'm going to put that correlation in there before I forget it. Okay, let me hit the save button on that. Jump back. And so I'm going to put this here. 17 through 19. I think that was what it was.
Yep.
So I guess I'm not gonna get it finished, am I? Maybe I am. Oh yeah, we are. We can do this real quick, can we? No. Okay, so he says so he receives his son back from the dead, essentially. And Abraham lifts up his eyes, looks, behold, there's the ram. And so Abraham goes and takes the ram, offers him instead of his son. And then that's where Jehovah Jireh gets its name. Oshea says, when Abraham needed a lamb, God provided. When humanity needed a perfect and sinless lamb, God provided. That's a good point as well, Oshea. Sam says, I have to think on that. Isaac was recommended back, resurrected back. Go back to Hebrews, Sam. By faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That's how Isaac was the unique son of Abraham. Accounting that Abraham believed that God was able to raise Isaac up even from the dead. So now we have the reasoning behind this. If God was able to open Sarah's womb the first time and give Abraham and Sarah a son at 99 and 90 years old, he could certainly bring Isaac back to life or give him another son of promise. And because of his faith, he offered his son. And in that offering, he received him as well in a figure from the grave. So this part here, from whence also he received him in a figure, that is, from the dead. From the dead. Notice that. From which also Abraham received him in a figure. So how did he receive him from the dead? Abraham was told, go offer your son Isaac. Abraham counted Isaac as a dead man from the time God said, offer him. So for the entirety of the 3 days journey to Abraham, Isaac was dead. Then, as he went to offer Isaac, who in Abraham's mind was already dead, he just hadn't fulfilled the deed yet, God stopped him and gave him back his son. In essence, in a figure, raising him from that grave and giving him back to Abraham. Restoring Isaac to life in the mind of Abraham. And so that was the shadow of what was to come so many thousands of years later. One might say, so many hundreds of years, a couple thousand years, whatever it was, from Abraham to Jesus, when the real thing happened and God offered his son in our place. And so we're going to pick up in verse 15 next week. I hope and pray that you have been edified through our study today, and that you have learned much. And I pray that you will also begin or keep meditating upon what you have learned, upon what we have read. Hopefully we'll get through 23 next week. We made it a good portion of the way through 22 this week. So keep reading, keep studying to show yourselves approved unto God, workmen that need not be ashamed. I'll see you then. God bless in your walk with